She couldn't remember when exhaustion stopped being just tiredness and became something darker, something that hollowed her out from the inside. That night, when her legs carried her out the door without permission, when the house fell silent behind her and the streetlights blurred into one continuous glow, she had no destination, no plan, just the desperate need to keep moving before she shattered completely. What she found in those empty hours between midnight and dawn wasn't what she expected. It wasn't relief. It wasn't peace. It was a stranger whose words would unravel everything she thought she knew about her family, her choices, and the price she'd been paying in silence. Some encounters change you. Others expose what was already broken. The house had been quiet for exactly 11 minutes when Claire realized she was already outside. She hadn't grabbed her coat, hadn't locked the door behind her, hadn't even checked if her phone was in her pocket. Her body had simply moved, carrying her past the living room where toys lay scattered like evidence of a crime scene, past the kitchen sink still piled with dishes from a dinner she couldn't remember serving, past the closed bedroom door where her husband slept the heavy, unbothered sleep of someone who believed everything was fine. The November air bit at her skin through her thin sweater, but she kept walking. Pain was better than numbness. Cold was better than the suffocating weight that had pressed against her chest for months, maybe years. She had stopped counting. The neighborhood looked different at this hour. Empty driveways, dark windows, street lamps casting yellow pools of light that she moved through like a ghost. Her feet knew the route without her directing them. The same loop she'd walked 1,000 times, pushing a stroller, holding small hands, wiping tears and noses and sticky fingers that never seemed to stay clean for more than 30 seconds. But tonight there was no stroller, no small voice asking why the moon followed them or when they'd be home. Just Claire and the sound of her own breathing, ragged and uneven, like she'd been running even though she was barely moving. She wondered if anyone would notice she was gone. Her husband wouldn't wake until morning, conditioned by years of sleeping through midnight cries and early wake-ups that somehow only ever reached her ears. Her daughter was 7 now, old enough to sleep through the night, but still young enough to need her for everything. Everything. The word echoed in her head with each step. Breakfast, lunches, homework, permission slips, doctor appointments, play dates, birthday parties, the school fundraiser, the broken bathroom faucet, the overdue library books, the grocery list that never got shorter, the laundry that multiplied in the dark, the thank you cards she'd been meaning to write for 6 months, the friend's text she'd left unanswered for 3 weeks because she didn't have the energy to explain why she couldn't meet for coffee, when the truth was she could barely get herself dressed most days. Everything. She stopped at the corner where the street light flickered, a rhythm of light and shadow that matched the pulse behind her eyes. A headache had been building since afternoon, or maybe it had never left from yesterday, just shifted and reshaped itself into something she'd learned to ignore, along with everything else her body tried to tell her. Sleep, rest, stop. Her body had been screaming those words for so long they'd become background noise, easily drowned out by the louder demands of everyone else. She pressed her palms against her eyes until she saw colors. When had she last cried? Really cried, not just the silent tears that leaked out while she stood at the kitchen counter making lunches at 11 at night because she'd forgotten again during the day. When had she last felt anything besides this endless crushing exhaustion that had nothing to do with being tired and everything to do with being empty. A sound made her look up. Footsteps. Someone else was out here in the dark, walking toward her from the opposite direction. A woman, maybe her age, maybe older. It was hard to tell in the weak light. She wore dark clothes and walked with the same purposeless purpose Claire recognized, because she was doing it too. Walking to walk. Moving to feel something besides the weight of standing still. They should have passed each other like strangers do at this hour. A brief acknowledgement, a nod, then gone. But the woman stopped. She stopped right in front of Claire, under the flickering streetlight, and looked at her with eyes that seemed too knowing, too aware. "You're her, aren't you?" The woman's voice was quiet, but clear. Claire felt something cold slide down her spine that had nothing to do with the November air. "I'm sorry?" The woman tilted her head slightly, studying Claire's face the way you'd study a photograph you'd seen before but couldn't quite place. Sarah's mother. The woman said it like a fact, not a question. Claire nodded slowly, confused. Her mind raced through possibilities. Parent from school? Someone she'd met at one of the endless events she attended while feeling like she was watching her life from outside her body? "I thought so." The woman's expression didn't change. "I'm Maya. We haven't met, but I know your husband." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. The streetlight flickered. Claire's heart began to beat faster, pushing against her ribs like it wanted out. She wanted to ask what that meant. Know your husband. But something in Maya's face told her to wait, to listen. "I wasn't sure if I'd ever get a chance to talk to you," Maya continued. Her voice carried no anger, no accusation, just a tired kind of resignation that Claire understood, bone deep. "But seeing you here, now, like this," she gestured vaguely at the empty street, the late hour, the obvious fact that they were both women who walked out of their lives for a few stolen moments of nothing. "I think you need to know." Claire's mouth had gone dry. "Know what?" Maya reached into her jacket and pulled out her phone. The screen lit up her face in harsh blue-white light, making her look older, sadder. She scrolled for a moment, then turned the phone toward Claire. Text messages. Dozens of them. The name at the top made Claire's vision blur at the edges. Her husband's name. Her husband's number. Messages that went back months. "I'm not telling you this to hurt you," Maya said softly. "I'm telling you because you deserve to know why you feel the way you do. Why you're out here walking in the middle of the night looking like you're about to disappear. Because maybe you've been carrying all of it alone while he's been somewhere else. Not just physically." Everywhere that matters, Claire couldn't move, couldn't speak. The phone screen glowed between them, like evidence of something she'd known, but hadn't let herself know. The kind of truth your body recognizes before your mind catches up. All those late nights he said were work meetings. All those times he seemed distant, distracted, annoyed when she asked for help. All those moments she'd felt crazy for feeling lonely in her own marriage, guilty for not being grateful enough, weak for not handling everything better. The streetlight flickered again. Maya lowered the phone. "I have 2 kids," she said, 7 and 9. "I've been doing it alone for most of their lives, even though their father lives in the house. I know what it looks like when a woman is drowning and everyone around her pretends not to notice because it's easier than helping. I see you because I am you." Claire's knees felt weak. She wanted to sit down on the cold pavement, wanted to scream. wanted to wake up and discover this was another exhaustion-induced hallucination, her mind finally breaking under the pressure. But Maya's face was too real. The phone in her hand was too real. The messages were too real. "Before you go back," Maya said. And somehow Claire knew she meant back to the house, back to the life, back to pretending everything was fine. "You need to decide something. Are you going to keep carrying all of it? Or are you going to make them see you?" Claire stood in that pool of flickering light for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Maya's question hung in the air between them, sharp and unavoidable. "Are you going to keep carrying all of it? Or are you going to make them see you?" She didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the truth was, she didn't know how to stop carrying it. Didn't know what would happen if she let it all fall. Would her family crumble? Would her daughter suffer? Would she prove every fear right? That she wasn't strong enough? Good enough? Capable enough? Maya seemed to understand the silence. She put her phone away and looked at Claire with something that wasn't quite pity, but wasn't indifference either. Recognition, maybe. The kind that only comes from living inside the same suffocating reality. "I used to think if I just worked harder, loved more, gave more, it would be enough." Maya said that eventually they'd notice. They'd appreciate it. They'd help. But invisible labor stays invisible until you stop doing it. Until you make noise. Until you break. Her words landed like stones in Claire's chest. She thought about all the time she'd swallowed her exhaustion, her resentment, her bone-deep loneliness, because expressing it felt like failure. Good mothers didn't complain. Good wives held it together. Good women made it look easy, even when it was killing them. Maya reached out and touched Claire's arm, just briefly. "Whatever you decide to do with this information, do it for you. Not because you want to save your marriage or protect your daughter from the truth, or because you're afraid of what people will think. Do it because you matter." Then she walked away, disappearing into the darkness the same way she'd emerged from it, leaving Claire alone, under the stuttering streetlight, with a truth she couldn't unknow. The walk back to her house felt longer than the walk away from it. Each step was weighted with decision, with the knowledge that she couldn't go back inside and pretend. Couldn't slip back into bed and wake up tomorrow and make breakfast and pack lunches and smile through another day of slowly disappearing. The front door was still unlocked. She'd left it open in her haze. Another thing to feel guilty about, except she didn't have room for guilt anymore. The house was full of it. The living room toys, the kitchen dishes, the closed bedroom door. She stood in the hallway and looked at that door for a long time. Behind it, her husband slept. The man she'd built a life with. The man who'd somehow found time and energy for someone else, while she drowned in the daily work of keeping their family afloat. The man who'd let her believe she was weak for struggling, when he'd been the one dividing himself, leaving her to carry double the weight on her own. Claire opened the door, turned on the light. He stirred, confused, squinting against the sudden brightness. "Claire, what time is it?" "Late," she said. Her voice sounded different, steadier, or maybe early. Depends how you look at it. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, still half asleep. "Are you okay?" "No," she said. "I'm not." And suddenly the words were there, all of them, the ones she'd swallowed for months and years. They came out in a rush, not angry, but clear. Each one a small act of resurrection. "I'm not okay. I haven't been okay. And you haven't noticed because you haven't been here. Not really. Not where it matters." He started to protest, to deflect, to say the things people say when confronted with uncomfortable truths. But Claire didn't let him. She told him about the exhaustion that had become her default state, about the loneliness of being the only one who remembered everything, managed everything, carried everything, about the invisible labor that kept their lives running while he got to be tired from his job, his stress, his needs. She told him about Maya, about the messages, about the lies by omission that had made her question her own reality, her own sanity. And she told him that something had to change because she couldn't keep disappearing into the role of mother and wife until there was nothing left of the person she used to be. He tried to explain, to justify, to minimize, but his words sounded hollow even to him. She could see it in his face, the slow realization that he'd been caught, yes, but more than that he'd been absent. That he'd taken and taken and taken while giving nothing back except the bare minimum that let him feel like he was participating. The fight lasted until dawn, not screaming, not dramatic, just the slow, painful excavation of everything that had been buried, all the resentment, all the unmet needs, all the moments she'd needed him and he'd been somewhere else. All the times he'd acted like her exhaustion was an inconvenience instead of a symptom of something broken in how they divided their lives. When the sun finally came up, filtering through the bedroom curtains in weak November light, they sat on opposite sides of the bed in silence. Sarah would wake up soon. The day would start. Breakfast would need to be made. But something had shifted. Claire had made herself visible, had made noise, had broken maybe, but in the breaking had found something she'd lost. Her voice. "I don't know if we can fix this," she said finally, "but I know I can't keep living like I have been. I won't." He nodded slowly. She couldn't tell yet if he really understood or if he was just tired, cornered, caught. Time would tell. Action would tell. Words were cheap, and she'd heard enough of them. What she needed now was change. Real change. The kind that meant he took the mental load, remembered the appointments, noticed when the laundry needed doing, saw her as a person instead of a function. The kind that meant she could breathe again. Down the hall, she heard Sarah's door open. Small feet padding toward the bathroom. The familiar sounds of morning starting, whether she was ready or not. But this time, when Claire stood up to face the day, she felt different. Lighter, maybe. Or maybe just less invisible. She'd been seen, finally. By Maya, a stranger who understood. By her husband, forced to look. But most importantly, by herself. And that was where it had to start. The decision to matter. The refusal to disappear. The understanding that being exhausted, overwhelmed, and at the end of your rope doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And being human means you get to ask for more. Demand more. Expect more. Not someday. Not when things calm down. Not when you've earned it by being perfect enough. Now. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own life, share it. Talk about it. Because the more we make noise, the harder it becomes for people to pretend they don't see us drowning. And maybe, just maybe, we can start building something different. Something where mothers aren't expected to burn themselves out to keep everyone else warm. Where exhaustion isn't worn like a badge of honor, but recognized as a cry for help. Where being seen isn't something we have to fight for, but something we're given freely, because we matter. Not for what we do, for who we are.